Hey everybody, what are the settlement procedures in the RTP system? Now, settlement procedures are important for everyone to understand, so you'll be aware of what is happening, when it's happening, and where it's happening. When we discussed how payments flow, one of the first things we learned when a payment is entered into the system is that the RTP system shall not release a sending participant's payment message to the receiving participant unless the sending participant's current pre-funded position or its funding provider's current pre-funded position is equal to or greater than the amount of the payment message. And if you're a non-funding group member, then the RTP system will not release a sending participant payment message to the receiving participant if it would cause the participant to exceed their net send limit. If the conditions for release of a payment are met, meaning you have the money to cover the payment available, then upon release of the payment message, the RTP system shall record entries to reserve the amount of the payment. Remember, we saw this before. They're going to reserve the amount of the payment. This is a reserve, kind of like a hold on the amount to make sure it's not used for anything else. At least not until it's released or until it moves out of there, right? We don't want to see it be used. This is done by the RTP system, and it's done by simply decreasing the sending participant's net position, which by now you probably realize will also decrease the current pre-funded position of the sending participant. If the sending participant is a non-funding group member, then this is a decrease to the current pre-funding position of its funding provider, okay? This is done so that the sending participant or funding provider's current pre-funding position cannot be reduced below the reserved amount before the payment has either been canceled, which that's really hard to do, rejected, or settled. It can be rejected and it can be settled, but we really don't see cancellations very often at all in the RTP network. Well, what's next? If there is a cancellation or rejection, then the RTP system just unreserves the amount of the payment by increasing the sending participant's net position, which will also increase either their current pre-funded position or the sending participant or the sending participant's funding provider pre-funded position will be increased. But we want payments to flow and see what happens when the payment is accepted or accepted without posting. We talked about that a lot in our funds availability class of what happens when it's accepted or it's accepted without posting. Now let's look at what happens for the participants when it's accepted or accepted without posting. Now, if the conditions for the release of the payment are satisfied, then the money is there and the system sends the message on to the receiving participant, and upon the RTP system's receipt of the receiving participant's accept or accept without posting, the system will record entries to credit the amount that was reserved by increasing the receiving participant's net position, which will also increase their CPP. Settlement is complete when the RTP system has recorded both the decrease in the sending participant's net position and the increase in the receiving participant's net position. And this happens simultaneously. So we see the decrease, we see the increase, and it happens at the same time. And please do note that completion of settlement constitutes final settlement of the RTP payment. Finality, well, it's a good thing and it's important in all payment channels, especially within the settlement process. This is where we have our finality. Okay, I do know this. That is going to be in a perfect world, or it's a simplified example of the settlement process where everything goes right. And most payments, everything will go right. What if things go wrong? What are the actual expectations for the participants when there's a problem? Well, a sending participant is expected to maintain a minimum CPP equivalent to its pre-funded requirement, but you can have more. That is in order to ensure sufficient liquidity for its ongoing payment activity within the RTP system. But that doesn't mean that a sending participant will never go below their pre-funded requirement. And as we've seen, well, what happens if they do? If they go below the pre-funded requirement, we know that there will be alerts that are sent. We know that you need to have supplemental funding. All of that happens. And the sending participant's CPP may go below its pre-funded requirement at certain times due to its current payment activity. And if that happens, the sending participant is required to provide supplemental funding to bring the CPP back to the amount equal to or greater than its pre-funded requirement. If a sending participant's CPP falls below its pre-funded requirement, its ability to send payments will not be stopped. Payments will only be rejected if the sending participant's CPP is less than the individual payment amount. In other words, if you run out of money, just because you fell below the pre-funded requirement though, that doesn't mean that there weren't some funds still there. If you run out of money, then there's nothing going to be sent though. How about an example? If during the reconciliation window, the sending participant sends out more payments than it receives, and its CPP at cutover is less than its original opening pre-funded position, and the opening pre-funded of the new reconciliation window is less than the sending participant's pre-funding requirement, then that sending participant will have to, they must perform a supplemental funding to be able to bring its CPP back up to at least a minimum of its pre-funding requirement. But that doesn't mean payments can't be sent or that they're going to be automatically rejected. You got to get to no money for that to actually happen. When it comes to settlement and the pre-funded requirement, remember that the requirement is a minimum level. And you can always have more, but we also saw in talking about disbursements, if you get too much, clearinghouse will tell you to take it out. But you can have more. And you should be receiving payments to help balance everything out too. Well, at least we hope everything balances out. Maybe we should talk more about balancing and reconciliation. How about coming right up in our next class? For now, class dismissed.